Well, that was a big improvement over Thursday night. Let's discuss Luca Pinelli's big game on today's Locked on Blue Jackets.
You're Locked on Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked on Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked on Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. We are, I said if we won last night that I was going to do an episode, so here we are. This episode will be 20 minutes of talking about Luca Pinelli and 3 minutes talking about everything else. No. But I do want to talk about Luca Pinelli, because the little engine that could, right? Like, the thing about Luca Pinelli is there was, and I'm including myself here, and we'll talk about the game in a second, but Trey Fix-Wolansky was a big loss for the Monsters, right? And I liked him as a player as well. I thought that he never really got a fair shake in Columbus for various reasons. Obviously, the loss of Gavin Brindley from the prospect pool stings as well, because I think Gavin Brindley is going to be really, really good for the Colorado Eagles this year, and also probably will see some NHL time with the Avs, and that's gonna really suck. But Luca Pinelli kind of exists in the same ish archetype as those two players, but he's on a different level. And I'm not saying that Brindley wouldn't ever hit that level, because I do think that Brindley will end up having a better NHL career than Pinelli. But, like, you watch Pinelli play and you're like, man, yeah, kid's got that dog in him. Like, kid's a gamer, you know? All of the other cliches that people say about players, but he was excellent last night. He drove the engine of this team. There were other players that were good as well. I thought there were some players that were much improved from the game on Thursday. I thought there were some players that didn't improve. So we'll talk about those guys in a second here. But 4-point night from Luca Pinelli, which I believe puts him at 5 points over the two games. Scored a goal finally, because that's the other thing as well, is Luca Pinelli's a goal scorer. He had, I think, his D+1 year, I think he hit 48 goals in the OHL, which is hard to do, right? He's a goal scorer, but of his 5 points, 4 of them have been assists, and one of them was that incredible assist to Oiva Kaskinen in Thursday's game, right? So the fact that he's not scoring but is putting up points still is really promising, right? So huge game from Luca Pinelli. Again, like, it looked like when he was out on the ice, they looked like a different team. I still really love that combination of him and Keskinen. I think if you're Trent Vogelhuber, you're kind of, and he's, obviously he's behind the bench for this tournament, you are kind of rubbing your hands with glee at the concept of keeping these two together for, the entire season, because I really, really think that those two have clicked early, and sometimes guys just have chemistry, right? They're both goal scorers. I think Pinelli is the better goal scorer, but Keskinen's got 2 goals in the tournament. And you can't argue with that, right? So, stick those two guys together and find a third guy for them to play with, whether that's Jordan Dumais, who I thought was improved after he was basically invisible for all of Thursday's game, unless he was doing things wrong. Had a goal last night, and I believe an assist as well, and looked much more engaged in the offensive zone, which is what I wanted to see from him, right? Like, there was a lot more of, I guess, jump in Dumais' step, which I do wonder if that is a case of, he was kind of flat-footed on Thursday. I wonder if the coaches sat him down and said, hey, you've got to be more proactive. You've got to be, you've got to do things instead of waiting for things to do you. That doesn't, the metaphor doesn't, the analogy doesn't work. It's not an analogy, but you know what I mean. You've got to be an active participant instead of a passive participant in this game. And he looks much more active. Still things to work on. I still want to see a little bit more jump from him. I still want to see a little bit more. I still want to see some improvement in his decision making. specifically because there was still, moments in that game where you'd get set up in the offensive zone and then it just suddenly would all go terribly wrong. And I'd be like, oh, yep, there's number 22. But much, much improved from Thursday's game, I thought. So I don't know if he's the answer to be the third guy on that line, but if you've got Pinelli and Keskinen, then just find a guy, right? Whether that's James Malatesta, whether that's Jack Williams, whether that's literally whoever, right? Max McHugh, who I thought had a spirited game, let's say. He has been an interesting one because he hasn't really featured points-wise, but teams know when he's out there, right? And he does have that kind of, I don't think he's going to be as good of a fighter as Mathieu Olivier, but I do think he might have that kind of energy of if he's on the ice, teams are going to be a little bit like, teams will know where he is, right? Almost killed a dude. I think it was Constantine Helenius, who was behind the net, and Max McHugh comes charging in at about 40 miles an hour, it feels like. Helenius just escapes, but like that was so close to just a full murder behind the goalie. But like I said, overall, great game from Pinelli specifically and that top line. There's a couple of other guys that I wanted to kind of touch on that had solid games as well, but for the most part, like, again, good things were happening every time Pinelli was on the ice. And he's kind of a little butthead, right? Like he's kind of an asshole to play against. Constantly getting in guys' faces, especially after the whistle, which I think might just be the consequences of being 5'9". And that's your problem. If you want to make it a problem, you can. He doesn't have a problem with it. But he was great for the Blue Jackets last night. And again, I think Trent Vogelhuber is making a lot of notes about what kind of player Pinelli is. I know the organization is really high on him. I'm still surprised that he dropped all the way to the 4th round. Not like super surprised because again, he's 5'9", but like he feels like one of those guys that in 3 years you can be like, how did this guy go in the 4th round? Which is really, really fun. I love that for him. I love that for us. There's not an NHL. There is an NHL future for him. I don't think it's this season, but I think he could very easily dominate in the A this year if he gets the tiniest bit of support from the team around him. And I think Keskinen is a great first piece to that. Going to take a quick break, and then I want to talk about another player that I really, really liked, and was, again, kind of a standout, and that's Guillaume Richard, who was excellent on Thursday, and was also really, really good last night. And I want to talk about him and also the defense as a whole. So we'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about FanDuel. The NFL season is here. FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel fits however you like to bet, whether you like player props, whether you like a same-game parlay, whether you like just kind of keeping an eye and jumping in as the action unfolds. You can do mid-game bets. You can, put like I said, a same-game parlay together, which I love to do. Or if you just kind of think, hey, that guy's going to score a goal tonight, you can put $5 on it. And if it wins, $300 are yours. So you can use on whatever you want. It is the best way to add a little bit more energy to those game day Sundays. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're going to talk a little bit more about the things that I liked. And by things that I liked, I mean, we're going to talk about the defense, and there was one player that I liked, which is, no, that's unfair to say. I thought Caleb McDonald had a very solid game. Obviously, he got that goal, that I believe the 2-2 goal. But Guillaume Richard was just, every time he was on the ice, everything was mostly fine. As soon as he left the ice, everything kind of fell apart a little bit in their own zone. And obviously, there was that big offensive improvement. They scored 7 goals, but they also allowed 5 goals. And so the offensive improvement, improvement defensively, because obviously they went from allowing 8 goals on Thursday to only allowing 5 goals. And I do think that Nolan Lalonde was much better tonight than he was. He had flashes of good play on Thursday, but I thought he was much more solid tonight. And frankly, he allowed, what was it? There was 1 power play goal, 1 shorthanded goal, 2 even strength goals, or 1 4-on-4 goal, I believe, which is 4-on-4 goals are a different breed, right? And also that goal at the end with like 0.4 seconds left or whatever, that the garbagest of garbage time goals. But I thought he was much improved. I thought he looked solid, made a couple of really, really excellent saves. So I was impressed by Lalonde. Defensively, still kind of shaky, right? If Richard's not on the ice, then things were kind of a problem. I thought Caleb McDonald was fine offensively, but a little bit of an adventure in his own zone. Charlie Alec is fighting it, man. I really, really wanted him to have a better game today, or last night. I think he's further off than a lot of people think, right? Like, you take a guy in the second round, he was, I believe, 36 or 37 overall, I want to say, a couple of years ago. And you take a guy like that and you're like, right, okay, well, he's not NHL ready right now, but you want him to be NHL ready in a couple of years. I think he might be more of a project than that. There's not like glaring red flags where I'm like, oh, this is going to be a problem that needs to be hammered out, but I do think that he is further away from being an option than I thought, than potentially a lot of people think, right? And there was some comments last night about, oh, I saw one comment calling him a bust, which I'm going to go ahead and assume is hyperbolic and or a joke, but this is a guy that I think you're going to send him back to Tri-City next season. And then honestly, probably a couple of years in the AHL. Like, I don't think Alec's going to be a real NHL option for at least another 3 years. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Defensemen take more time to cook. And you want to get it right, because if you rush a defenseman, then you ruin them. I think defensemen are the most important in terms of development. I think, and I say this because I think everyone understands that goalies need longer, right? So it's very rare that a goalie gets rushed. Defensemen get rushed all the time. Forwards get rushed as well, but I feel like it's less crucial. If you rush a defenseman, the NHL is a difficult league to play in for a defenseman. If you rush it, then you're gonna ruin him, right? So Alec, he needs time. He needs more time. And I think that going back to the WHL for another season is going to be really good for him. I was kind of wondering, is he going to be, obviously Jackson Smith making the jump to the NCAA. I think that's good for him. It'll take him up on a new level. It'll let him figure out, okay, this is a really good kind of in between WHL and AHL spot. Alec, I think, is probably going to succeed more with at least one more WHL season under his belt. Probably just the one. Because I believe he'll age out after next season. But he was either invisible or throwing the puck to the opponent, which is not great. To the point where I didn't, and I was looking for him as well, right? And I didn't see anything that stood out from Alec's game, which is a problem. Now, he's still very, very young, obviously. And, again, when comparing him to Richard has, I believe, at least 3 years of NCAA hockey under his belt, potentially 4. I don't remember off the top of my head. He's going to look more polished. He's going to look more ready to play at this level. And but at the same time, Richard was a 4th-round pick and Alec was a 2nd-round pick. Like, you want to see that pop from a 2nd-round pick. So I understand the frustration why you're not seeing it, but if we get to this time next year and we get to the prospect tournament next year and we're still seeing this Charlie Alec, then it's time to panic. But until then, I'm just I'm going to give the kid the benefit of the doubt. He's 19, 20 years old. There's still time, right? I get it. You want to see the play. You want to see your higher drafted prospect pop, but it's not the end of the world that he didn't, right? And again, I do think that the defense as a whole was wobbly, adventurous, I would say. Improved from Thursday in that they were not like a complete disaster all of the time. But again, this sure is a tournament of like B plus Blue Jackets prospects to C to D Blue Jackets prospect and a bunch of camp invites. That being said, there were a couple of camp invites that I thought showed up last night, which I thought was it Ryder Mosley, I believe? No, Ryder Bolton, and I'm gonna have to pull the roster up. But the Blue Jackets, I thought had a Ryland Mosley. I was so close with Ryder. Ryland Mosley, I thought, right up until the goal, I was like, okay, he's noticeable. I believe he played on the second line with Jack Williams, which probably helps. But I liked his game. I thought it was again noticeable, which for a camp invite you want to be noticeable in a good way instead of noticeable in a bad way. I'm looking at you, PJ Hagen, who did fully murder a dude, and I believe got kicked out of the game for it. He, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't think, and maybe this is a me problem, but I wonder if the best way to show up at a camp like this is to maybe try to score a goal instead of just trying to like murder the other team. I don't know. Maybe I'm not old fashioned enough. I don't know. But I thought Mosley was solid. Again, like looked effective offensively, which is what you want to see from your camp invites, right? I don't necessarily expect them to pop, but I expect them to be or try to be noticeable, right? Put yourself out there in a way that, you know, maybe don't be as risky as some, but I thought Mosley had a couple of plays where I was like, okay, yeah, this is a guy that wants to show the staff that he's maybe an option. You know, throw him an AHL contract, keep an eye on him or whatever. Similarly, Tyler Peddle, I thought was an interesting addition. I was surprised to see him on the camp roster. I believe his father works for the organization, so like maybe not that surprising. But he feels like a guy that like he drew a penalty and then scored on the delayed penalty call, so the 6-on-5 that happened as a result of that penalty. Which again, like that's what you want to see from a 7th round draft pick that you have kind of renounced the rights to, right? And I wonder if he is going to see an AHL deal on the back of that. I wonder if they don't want him, you know, I wonder if they renounce the NHL rights, but are going to give him an AHL deal potentially. He I thought was fine, right? Again, nothing spectacular, but that's what you want to see from a guy who's trying to make a case for signing a pro contract. Seymour, I thought, Nicholas Seymour, I thought was a good blend of trying to make a difference offensively and also throwing his weight around. You know, he I believe, didn't try to murder anyone. There was some scuffles. There was some shenanigans, let's say. But I thought, again, and Seymour, I believe this is his second prospect tournament with the Blue Jackets. So, like, obviously they liked him enough last year to bring him back. I don't, off the top of my head, know how old he is or, you know, how close to the pros he is. He's 20 years old. I know that he had approximately 1 billion penalty minutes for Saginaw last season. He had 97 penalty minutes, so not quite 1 billion, but like I stand by my hyperbole. This is going to be his. So he's had 4 seasons in the OHL. So yeah, my guess is he's going to go back as an overager next year, but he might be a guy that, again, you throw an AHL contract to based on showing up to a tournament like this and looking effective. Not everyone's going to score goals. And I want to put it out. I want to clarify that, like, I'm not looking for all of the camp invites to come in and score goals and look AHL ready and get contracts, right? But I do think that there's a difference between how Sema played last night and what Hagen did to, I believe it was Isaac Rosén. I might be wrong about that. But, you know, like, I get it. You want to come in, you want to throw your weight around. You want to throw your weight around specifically at top picks on the other team to kind of show them who's boss, I guess. But it didn't work out. Got tossed from the game. I suspect Mr. Hagen will not be playing in today's game. I'm going to be very interested to see what the roster for today's game looks like. My expectation is that Evan Gardner will play the full game, which kind of sucks for the camp invite goalie, Vichari. I wondered if he might get half a game, but I guess he's just there in case of emergency. But Evan Gardner playing the game, and I suspect we'll probably see some shakeups. I don't think we'll rest any of the big guys, but I think some of the camp invites will probably swap in and out, which is not a bad thing, right? Give guys a chance. If I had to guess in terms of, again, just kind of looking at the roster that the Blue Jackets brought to this, I believe last year everyone performed so well that they what's the word? They all got invited to camp, like full training camp. I don't think that's going to be the case this time. But I think, again, guys that might get invited to camp, I think Mosley might get an invite. I think Seaman might get an invite. Peddle might get an invite. But apart from that, like anyone that's not already under contract, but for the Blue Jackets, I don't know. Or is a prospect, or is it like a drafted prospect, right? Like I don't think Owen Griffin has signed his ELC, but I'm sure he will be at training camp, right? Of the camp invites, like those are really the only three guys that I could see getting invited. I know that Don Waddell likes a smaller training camp roster than most. I believe they said that there were going to be 52 players, which makes me think that they've already basically decided. But I wonder if they're going to sneak in a couple more guys based on their performances at this tournament, which again is like good for them, right? I'm not expecting any of these guys to come to training camp and make the NHL roster. But if you perform well enough at the prospect tournament that you get an invite to the big boy training camp, then that's a good sign, right? The organization wants to see a little bit more from you, maybe wants to see you, playing amongst the big boys as opposed to playing amongst the prospects. And from there, I think it's easier to determine, okay, this guy is succeeding because he's a 22-year-old OHL player or whatever, a 21-year-old OHL player or a 25-year-old college player or whatever, amongst a group of 19, 20-year-old prospects. Or is he a guy that there is genuinely something there and they want to see if they can do anything with it. So training camp opens, I believe, on Wednesday, which is very exciting. First preseason game is on Sunday night, which is very exciting. I can't wait to talk about that kind of stuff. We'll be back tomorrow, which is Monday, with the final game, final thoughts on the prospect tournament, and we'll go from there. But that's all for me today. Thank you for listening, for making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets continues to be free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Blue Sky at JKOBFORSTER, mostly talking about Taskmaster if you are interested in that sort of thing. Or you can follow LO_Blue Jackets over on Twitter for all Blue Jackets all the time. Thank you once again for listening. Until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.